it's been the most like cathartic and like therapeutic experience for me to strip everything away. And I'm reminded about like why music purely matters, and connecting, and just like the most simple of joys of like making a sound, or like the class like ending the last note altogether, and the students, instead of us being like, wow, it was a beautiful last note, one of my other students is standing up and going like, yes, and like being like all excited. And I'm like, yes, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Like, we should be celebrating all of that.
Hello, and welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca for short, and I'm a clarinetist who studied at the Eastman School of Music and then went to London to get my master's and PhD, both at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Having shifted pathways in my own life, I love hearing about the varied careers musicians can have and how they got there. And that's precisely what we're exploring in this podcast. As I sit down with music graduates to chat about their unique musical journeys, hear their hard-earned wisdom, and learn about how they're orchestrating their own careers. For today's episode, I had the honor of sitting down with Annie Ray, Orchestra Director and Performing Arts Department Manager at Annandale High School and recipient of the 2024 Music Educator Award at this year's Grammys. Annie studied at the University of North Texas, doing a double major with harp performance and music education. She began teaching at Annandale High School in 2020. Despite COVID, the program has flourished over the years, and Annie has also started new programs, cultivating connection and inclusion in her classroom. Annie's enthusiasm and authenticity shines through everything she does, and her message of inclusivity and meeting every student where they're at is truly inspiring. She shares practical advice on how to approach teaching throughout the interview, and of course, we touch on her experience at the Grammys and meeting some exciting celebrities as well. You're listening to Annie and her husband Irving performing Piazzolla's History du Tango, arranged for harp and euphonium. Stay tuned till the end of the episode to hear some more of this performance. And now, let's get right into the interview. Hello, Annie, or Miss Ray, if there are any of your students watching, and welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, I'm honored to be here.
Well, I know that your life has been crazy lately,
yes.
So I really appreciate you making the time to come on the podcast, share some of your story and the work that you're doing here at Annandale High School, where you are the orchestra director, and we are currently filming at Annandale High School in the theater room, which is very cool. I am actually from Northern Virginia. I grew up in this area, and I got into music because of the music programs that were offered at the schools that I went to. And I know that I was so excited about music because of teachers just like you, who really went the extra mile to just make music fun and accessible. The work that you do is so important and often so overlooked, but I think it's amazing that it is recognized at one of the highest levels of musical achievement, which is the Grammys. And you are the most recent recipient of the 2024 Music Educator Award at the Grammys, which is a huge honor. Congratulations.
Thank you. It means a lot.
I'm really excited to hear more about your story and the work that you're doing here that was recognized for that honor, and also hopefully to hear a little bit about your experience at the Grammys. But first, I really want to hear about your background and how you got to where you are. Your story begins in Texas as a harp player. So could you just start off by sharing how you got into music, how you started playing the harp, which is not the most common of instruments, and what made you want to do a career in music?
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me. I'm so
course,
excited. And
absolutely.
any chance I get to share the Annandale story, I'm so excited and touched too. So yes, I'm originally from Texas, the Plano, Texas area, which is just a little bit north of Dallas. And I was born into a music family. So almost every single one of us plays a musical instrument. My brother is a percussionist and guitarist. My mom is a pianist. My dad is not musical. But then my mom's an identical twin, and And so I have two cousins who look just like me. One's a professional violinist, and then the younger is a cellist. And then aunts, uncles, band orchestra directors. My grandmother was a pianist, so like it's all of us. And now, funny enough, I married a musician too. But yeah, it all began. I started piano when I was 3 with my mom, and then I was at a Mexican restaurant one day, and I saw a harp, and I just like fell in love with it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, which is not something you think about like with classical harp right away, but when you think about like mariachi and all that, like then you're like, yes, it makes sense. But I fell in love with it, and my parents just like jumped on that right away with like that enthusiasm and gave me that opportunity. And because of my grandmother, I was able to get a harp. So I've been playing harp since I was 5, and actually one of my degrees is in harp performance. I still gig extensively up in this area, trying to balance it all. But from there, I was in the Plano school system, and I was in Dennis Langevin's orchestra program in my middle school, who he's the reason I am a orchestra director, is because of him. And I was so lucky to come back and then study with him as a student teacher, along with Brian Coatney, who was at the time at Plano Senior High School, now in Wiley, who both have greatly influenced who I am today.
Amazing. That's so interesting that it was at a Mexican restaurant that you saw the harp. I wouldn't have really thought it would turn out like that.
But here we are.
Yeah, very cool. So then you ended up going to the University of North Texas?
Yeah.
And you majored in both education and harp performance.
Yes.
So how was that decision? Were you always planning to major in both? And how did you balance these two different majors? How did they sort of feed into each other?
That's a great question. And people ask that all the time. Being a music educator makes me a better performer, and being a performer makes me a better music educator. So they really go hand in hand. And there was a lot of like talk of like, oh, we've never had a harpist come through our music ed program. North Texas music ed program is very rigorous and intensive. And they never had a harpist come through it. And so the entire time I was there, I was taking secondary lessons on violin, viola, cello, bass, really getting my hands around it. And when I was in the middle school program, I did play viola, which my students don't know.
Secret is out.
Yeah, the secret's out. I think they have a suspicion, but I would play viola with them when I wasn't playing harp. And so I just really got my hands wrapped around it. And in a way, like with those 2 degrees, especially with harp being so different from the rest of the string instruments, you might think that's like kind of a deficit. But in fact, I think it's made me a stronger educator, because a lot of like these trials that I've gone through with technique and like learning the accessibility on the instruments has made me a better musician now, because it's very fresh in my mind. But in addition, because University of North Texas was so kind as to substitute some of my methods courses for these intensive secondary lessons, I feel very comfortable on all the instruments and teaching all of them and understanding kind of the facility on each of the fingerboards.
Yeah, I love your point about how they feed each other and how being a music educator makes you a better performer, and the other way around. When I was studying at Eastman, I was a performance major, but I still took a bunch of education classes because I thought, oh, these are really useful and interesting and engaging classes, and I think really important for just musicianship in general. So I really appreciate that point, and it's really cool to see how you're able to integrate both of them into what you're doing today.
Yeah, of course. It's just one of those things where like you have to yourself like continually go through the trials of like learning a piece and like and working through that and remembering your own musicality. And I bring like my scores for the students. I'm like, look, this is how I approach a piece, or like my own, like I make it very real and human for them of like, I too am going through this and we're doing this together. We're all feeling this music together.
Then when you graduated from university, were you planning on becoming an orchestra director? What was that transition period like of entering the career field? And how did you end up here in Virginia from Texas at Annandale High School?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I struggle with this a lot. And I still do, like today, even like now, like winning this Grammy for like music education, like being a performer is so much of like who I am. And being a harpist is so much of who I am, but also being an educator is. And so finding this balance of like time to do it all. Oh goodness, we'll wait for the bell to go.
The reality of
the bell. Yeah, there'll be one more, but yeah, it's this challenge for me a lot of times of balancing those two things and living them out. But I did know I always wanted to be an educator ever since I was in Dennis's classes in middle school. Like it's so much a part of who I am. You know that like performance high you get when you finish a piece, right? And you can't sleep for like the night. And every day when I'm on the podium with these students, it's the same feeling that I get of like when they're making that connection or they're getting excited, and then I feed off of it. And it's like this big loop. So they don't realize how much they're giving to me. Yeah. Like they bring me so much joy, and it's the same feeling to me as when I finished performing a piece, which kind of affirmed that. But I ended up here in Virginia because my husband won a job in Pershing Zone United States Army Band. So next thing I knew, we were moving up here, and it's been a journey to get here. Like I was at a bunch of the feeder schools that come up here, but when this position opened and I got it, it was home.
So you started here in 2018, is that right? Okay. So what was the period like of starting at a new school, establishing yourself as the orchestra director, and fitting yourself into this already established music program, but also still bringing your own ideas and your own influence into the program?
Yeah, so I was hired in Fairfax County in 2018, but not specifically here at Annandale High School. So I moved in January. I was plopped into the middle of the year. It was like a whole thing. But then coming here, I got the job here at Annandale at 2020 during COVID. I am actually like, people are like, oh my God, how do you like start a program or like join a new program in the middle of COVID where we're doing all online learning? Because we were online for probably one of the longest periods of time of the school districts. And to me, it actually ended up being this like hidden blessing because I just got to start fresh. It was just me. And as the kids came back, like I got to really establish my own self, my own identity in the program because people just wanted to be back, you know? But with the virtual learning and online, I'm actually like really lucky that I retained almost every student. And that freshman class I had, they're graduating this year, and I'm saying goodbye to over 45 students this year who have trusted me and stuck with me. And I'm not a crier. I'm not like big on like emotional range, but I know I'm going to be a mess when we're playing our senior goodbye piece. It's just going to be a lot because they are Annandale program to me. They are the program, and they're leaving a legacy.
Yeah. Wow. That is crazy that you had to start as a new teacher when you can't even be with your students physically. And I think particularly for music, which is such a physical activity, and, you know, being able to listen to each other and see each other, that must have been really hard to navigate. But amazing that you were able to retain all of these students, that they stuck with you.
Yeah, it was so joyous, like to see their names pop up on the sheet. But like it is all like a lot about connection. So I would have them come and play like on the football field, or we'd be out on the back parking lot, or like and like after school and stuff. And then I did as many like community different approaches to projects and things when we were online as possible.
I love some of the new programs that you've been starting here, things like the Crescendo Orchestra and the Parents Orchestra, which are so interesting. I wonder if you could just share some about what those programs are and what was the inspiration behind starting them.
Yeah, a lot of people think that was like the main component of like the Grammy win. And it's actually like, if you go into my video, like there's a whole process to the Grammy application. There's a video you have to submit. And one of them is like a big overview of your program. And it's like 7 minutes long or something like that. And actually only about 36 seconds is about Crescendo Orchestra and about Parent Orchestra. So actually like the bigger piece is this story of what Annandale is, where we have like 66 countries represented here and what it means to meet every student where they're at, even if with these parents. So, both the Crescendo Orchestra and the Parent Orchestra are branches off of other people's initial ideas. Like they've kind of exponentially like blown up, like here, especially Parent Orchestra. The original idea, I believe, comes from my mentor, Brian Coatney, who's now at Wiley ISD. And
that was in North Texas.
That's in North Texas, yeah. And he has a program going, but we have over 200 caregivers who participate in ours every year, which is, it's just the nature of Fairfax County being so large. So we have that going. And then that program is where caregivers get to learn their student's instrument. And there's 4 different levels. So we have people who have never touched a musical instrument in their life, all the way up to people who played in high school and maybe college.
I think the Parents Orchestra is such an interesting idea. When I saw some of the videos about it, I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that myself before, but I love the idea of bringing parents alongside their children. And I think for especially parents who aren't in music, so my parents weren't in music before me and my sisters all got into music, you know, this is a whole new world to them, and it could feel really separate. So it's a really nice way of bringing them into that world. What was the reaction when you started this orchestra? Because I know now you're saying there was a wait list to be part of this.
There's a wait list
really
every year.
Popular, which is incredible. I love it. Was that the case at the beginning? Was there that instant enthusiasm? Were you worried about interest or people signing up for this program?
Oh yeah, I was totally nervous about it. It actually started off with about 15 parents who are, most of them are still in the core group, they're still there. Some of their kids have graduated, but they're still there with us. But the whole point of it is exactly like what you're saying is to educate parents. It's actually an advocacy piece to teach parents, like, it's so much more than notes and rhythms on the page. Like, it's not something you understand until you've sat in an ensemble before and felt that. But it was also it came out of a rage moment where I saw some parent post online on Facebook being like, oh, Jimmy brought home the violin today. I got to put in some earplugs. And I was like, gosh, that's so demotivating. Like, no wonder all these kids quit after 4th grade or 5th grade, because you just made them feel bad the whole time for learning something new. And so it started with that, but it's grown to so much more. So it's grown to parents having wait for the bell. We've had parents grow to being a big social aspect with it. We've had parents, so they go out after they meet up together and practice on their own. But even more so than that, the kid gets to be the expert now, right? So they get to connect with their kid more, even though they aren't there in the class with them. When they go home, their kid's like, Mom, no, you're holding the violin wrong. Let me show you. But then even beyond that, us as teachers, we're all volunteering our time, right? And now we get to watch each other teach. And it's oh my gosh, that's an amazing idea. That's fantastic. And so it's become this professional development experience for us too.
Yeah, and I feel that even combines a bit of the idea of education and performance going hand in hand, and how even these young students who maybe only saw themselves as, practicing or playing their instrument, and now they're taking more of that educator mode and being able to show their parents how to do things. And I feel the confidence that can bring to them would be really life-changing and inspiring. So I think I just think it's an amazing program.
No, it's genius. And it's not my program. That's why I can say Brian is a genius for having it going and stuff. But exactly, it gives the student confidence for the first time. It gives them a connection outside of TikTok to talk to their parents about it. And it's something about growing and learning something side by side that it's like nothing else, right? And it's also an advocacy for why quality instruments matter. Because maybe some parents roll up with instruments that are they might be what we call a violin-shaped object. And then they understand now oh, I see why I need an instrument that actually can make a core tone, a core sound.
I was curious about how that works. Does every parent just get their own instrument from wherever they're able to get it from?
No, it's their kid's instrument. So parents can... some parents do eventually, they figure out they they need their own actual size instrument, a full size. But we actually encourage every parent to come on their kid's tiny instrument or full size instrument right away, for that very reason of let me show you what it takes to make a good sound and why a quality instrument matters. And obviously some parents are not going to have access to those great instruments, but Fairfax County Public Schools does provide every student who's on free or reduced lunch an instrument for $20 for the whole year through the Instruments for All program. It's incredible. Wow. And they do hundreds of thousands of it. It's a ridiculous amount of instruments that they shell out every year to everybody to provide opportunity and access, which is one reason why I wanted to teach in this district.
Wow. I didn't know that about Fairfax County.
It's amazing, right?
Well done. Yeah. That's amazing. That's so cool about the Parents Orchestra. And could you share a little more about the Crescendo Orchestra then, and what was the inspiration behind starting that? What does the program look like? How has it been evolving over the years since you started it?
Yeah, so it's this whole conglomerate of different ideas that have all come together. So the inspiration started back when I first came into the county, when I was plopped into a random school, and I was given this selection of students, and there were two twin brothers who were put into my general education classroom who needed high support needs, and they were not given an instructional aid in there. And there was many opportunities where I was thinking that I was failing them, their education, like they weren't learning anything. And then one day I started working with them one-on-one just for like 2 minutes after class because our time window was so tight, and I was like, oh my gosh, they actually know everything. They're just processing in a different way. And so then I approached, I knew about this organization called the Giving Bach, B-A-C-H, like the composer, by Richard Meyer, which is kind of like a best buddies, like Special Olympics sort of kind of style playing where they get to kind of explore an instrument along a pier. And so I talked to the school about like starting something like that. And I also knew about United Sound, which is also very similar, but they have these fantastic books and these curriculums you can just purchase. But it is working with like peer mentorship. Oh, and then the elementary director at the school that I was at, elementary music teacher, she had a self-contained autism music class. And just, I would go in there and I would just watch, and I was like, wow, they are so joyous right now. Like, it's beautiful. So then COVID happens, we're here. And I'm very pregnant. And so nobody was here at the building, but I was here because my husband decided to take it upon himself and renovate the whole house, which is not conducive for virtual teaching and sledgehammering. Oh, yes. So I was here, and our special education department, the Cat B department, Cat B level support, category B, those students had already been pulled back because of it's just very difficult to give them the support needs that they do need back here. So they came back, and I was wandering the hallways, and I heard them, and so I just like kind of popped my head, and I was like, people! And I was like, oh man. And so I said, well, if you ever all need a break, like I have planning coming up, like how about you come down and we can mess around some instruments. And a student named Kevin came, and he sat and he played, and he was so mad about being there. He was so mad about being there. He was being pulled out of his routine. He would not look at me. He was not having it, super grumpy. But as soon as I started playing the cello for him, he said, me. And so I gave him the cello, and I just held on to it, and he grabbed the bottom of my hand, but I was like, whatever. And he started bowing back and forth, and he started tearing up. And it was this like beautiful moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like we're connecting here. And it was a very humbling experience. So they kept coming back during my planning. And then I ran this idea by my principal to start their own specific classroom for them and develop my own curriculum as a hybrid between concepts from Giving Bach and United Sound and concepts from general music curriculum, and then concepts from orchestra, and then also taking what they're doing in their special education classrooms, like taking their exact slides, their exact curriculum that they're doing in their day-to-day classrooms, and meshing it all into one. And that's how it started. Wow. And so it became its own standalone class where I was just kind of trial and erroring all the time and working alongside the best teachers in the world, which are the instructional assistants, the special education teachers, the occupational therapists, the speech therapists. We all worked together to come up with modifications for everyone and trying new things. And so it became like this big thing. I do have to give a shout out. There's another program out there in Texas. I think it's called Downing Giving Bach, which takes the Giving Bach model. And she developed a similar program, but a slightly different approach. So she's also fantastic. Yeah,
it's so interesting. And I really love how you just saw the need. And you just were, you took all these steps to try to fill it, and were able to learn from other educators who are experts in this field. Because I was curious when I heard about it, how you approached teaching these kinds of classes when you didn't have a background yourself in special education. You were saying in your TEDx talk about just sort of questioning yourself a bit about starting a program like this without that background. So what was that process like of, learning from these other educators and developing in this trial and error that you're talking about?
I love that question because a lot of people, I think, have a lot of fear when approaching this because they don't want to, and it's not a bad thing. They're wanting to do right by these students. And that's a wall that we're putting up, dividing ourselves from them instead of realizing there's resources out there to connect. And I said this before, I just love connecting with people. And this includes them. And it's been the most like cathartic and like therapeutic experience for me to strip everything away. And I'm reminded about like why music purely matters, and connecting and just like the most simple of joys of like making a sound, or like the class like ending the last note altogether, and the students, instead of us being like, wow, it was a beautiful last note, like one of my other students is standing up and going like, yes, and like being like all excited, and I'm like, yes, it is exciting.
Yeah.
Like, we should be celebrating all of that. But it goes back to what I was saying, like us as educators, we get so like locked in our own classroom. Like I challenge people I mentor all the time is like, go watch a math teacher, go watch an English teacher, go watch as many teachers as you can. Not just orchestra teachers, not just band teachers, but all of them. Because you learn so much when you open yourself up to that connection and the opportunity, and putting yourselves in those different environments. So I'm so lucky like that my team here was so welcoming and opening arms of like, yes, come learn from us, come learn and let us show you. And I guarantee almost every special education department out there is going to want to do this, because they also want to show to the world like why these kids are like the coolest.
Yeah, and the impact is incredible. And just, from the stories that you're telling, the way that students are able to express themselves differently and connect with people, connect with each other is really inspiring. I'm wondering if there are educators out there, people out there who are interested in starting up programs like the Crescendo Orchestra, programs like the Parents Orchestra. Do you have a piece of advice that you would give them for how to get started? Maybe in hindsight, some challenges that you were facing, any advice for them?
I mean, just go for it. Like, there's so many times that we're waiting for someone to give us permission or like the handbook for it, which I'm an open book to. Like, if anyone ever wants anything, like, just take it all. I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, because I think more things like this should exist. But just go for it and learn along the way, and know that what works for me is not necessarily what's going to work for you, because every community is different. Like the Crescendo Orchestra curriculum that I work with, it changes every year based on the students who are put in front of me. And we restart and we redo and we relearn every single year. So for the first time, like my class is like putting fingers down on the fingerboard. Two groups ago, we wouldn't have been able to get that far, and that's okay, and that's totally fine. And that's my big point with like Crescendo Orchestra and like how they've taught me so much is like, it's the same thing for your gen ed kids. Okay, you didn't get to the end of X, Y, and Z method book, or you didn't get to like teaching them shifting into whatever position. That's okay. Did you do what you did well with them? Like all these benchmarks that we set, they're all just made up.
Yeah.
They're all just made up in our own heads. Like, it doesn't really matter. Even with like UIL or assessment or all those things, like we choose what music we put for those kids. We choose what grade level to take them at. We don't have to take them like at X, Y, and Z grade level. Maybe for some school districts you do, but you have like repertoire in there that you can pick that's accessible to those kids and that can meet those goals. But also, like, who cares? This is all a made up system, you know? Like music is about like connecting. And so when you approach these new projects like Parent Orchestra or Crescendo, like stop holding yourself to like this conservatory approach of like, we have a very specific thing that we're doing, and just realize that you're not there to create the next Yo-Yo Ma. You're there to connect. You're there to be with people. You're there to teach them the sacrifice it is to like humble yourself to the notes and the rhythms on the page of learning a process. Like that's what our goal is.
I love that. And it reminds me of, I was watching the other day your TEDx talk, I believe it's called The Sound of Success.
Yeah, The Sounds of Success.
Sounds of Success. And I really encourage everyone to go watch it, because I feel like a lot of the things you're sharing were so important and really beneficial for musicians to hear. But it just reminds me of what you're saying now of, changing that benchmark and adapting and not being tied to maybe more traditional ideas of what success is, because success looks different for everybody. And I think in music that's so difficult because there often are such regimented ideas of what success is. So I just feel like what you've been saying and have been saying over the years of just changing what that idea is, especially in music, is really necessary and helpful.
Yeah, but the thing is like this concept of like it being so regimented is new. Like if you think about like chamber music, it's just like house music. It was just people that came together in jams. Like, oh, Jimmy's over here is bringing the recorder. You know what? I'm bringing the kazoo, but we're gonna play Haydn's whatever. Like it didn't matter. Like it was just like coming together and being there. And thank you for bringing up the TED Talk. And people like when they first see it think it's about like special education orchestra or crescendo orchestra, and it's not. It's about how music educators are some of the best teachers out there for any subject right now, because we are all doing this work of meeting kids where they're at, just through the fundamentals of what our program looks like.
Amazing. So with all of these things that you're doing with the Crescendo Orchestra, with the Parents Orchestra, and then I really appreciate how you were saying that your application for the Grammy was much bigger than that. It was about everything that you're doing, everything that is going on here at Annandale High School. I wondered if you could share some about that process of even applying for a Grammy. I don't know if even a lot of musicians know that there is a Grammy for music educator, which I think is incredible. I love that that is recognized. But how did you find out about it, and how did that process go of applying? What even made you want to apply?
So I actually didn't apply. So
no one applied for you?
So I was nominated.
Is that how it always is?
So you can nominate yourself, but I did not know that this was a thing. Also, so 2 cycles ago, I was nominated by my colleague who is the Performing Arts Department Chair at the time. Now I'm Department Chair. He's since moved on to another position, but Dr. Mike Ward was so kind as to nominate me. And I made it pretty far, like I think to the quarterfinals or semifinals, I can't remember. And then this last year I was nominated again by Dr. Angela Ammerman. And she was like, hey, do you want to like go through this process again? And I was like, sure, yeah, like we'll go through it. And it's very extensive. Like it's a very extensive process of multiple videos. There's a written portion. And when it came to like the video round of everything, I actually almost ended up not applying for it, like not continuing on, because at the time I was pregnant with my second, and I was so sick. Like the whole time I had this recurring sinus infection. Like I felt like my sinuses were constantly going to come out of my face, and like they could not get rid of it. And because there's limits on what you can take when you're pregnant. And so I told 2 of my students about it. I was like, hey, there's this thing that's happening. Like, if I don't have it in me to make these videos right now, like if you would like to make the nomination video, like you're more than welcome to. And so they took that on and obviously had me like work with them on it and stuff, but they narrated the whole thing and told the story of Annandale. And so when it comes to this award, when I say it's a student, it's like I really mean it, because I'm just the lucky person who's standing in the middle of this like incredible ecosystem here at Annandale. I said it again, like we have 66 countries here, 59 languages being spoken. We have refugees. We have students on free or reduced lunch. We have kids working jobs to support their families. We also have students who are more well off. We have like this huge range of diversity of cultures, and a lot of those cultures outside of this ecosystem might not get along typically. But here in my orchestra program and in this school, when they're playing together and all together, like they're connecting. So the whole Grammy process, I was actually framing it through the lens of connection, of the concept of music king, which is not my term either. I learned it in college and my like anthropology, music anthropology course. But the act of making music being the universal language, not music itself being the universal language. And so I've kind of taken that and spun it into like meeting everyone, the parents, the Crescendo Orchestra students, the students of all ability levels, educating the community about it, educating our school board about it, being an advocacy piece, and then also educating non-musicians about why music is so important through the story of my students. So I'm very, very lucky that I get to just be a part of that. And I'm very lucky that these students have accepted me and brought me in and taught me.
Yeah. And I really appreciate your humbleness in accepting the award, and that it's shared across everybody, that everyone had a hand in it, literally.
Yes.
Which is very cool. I remember watching the Grammys on February 4th and seeing the broadcast, and Trevor Noah gave you a shout out in the middle of the broadcast, which is so cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, a teacher from Fairfax County High School won this award. Incredible. What was that night like at the Grammys? I'm sure it was crazy, but could you share a little bit about it?
Yeah, it was so crazy. I keep on using the term whirlwind because there's not a better way for it. Because like one moment I was like on the podium with the students. I literally taught one class. So they announced it on CBS. I taught a class, and then I was like running to the airport, and then I was here at the Grammys and then next thing I knew I was back the next day or the next couple days.
When did you find out that you won it?
I knew about a month prior.
Okay,
I would say. So I knew about a month prior, but I kept it to myself.
Yeah.
And they asked me to also.
Yeah.
And so the students all found out at the same time. We had the school hosted a watch party here. And the kids were like, Miss Wright, that's gonna be so awkward if you don't win. And I was like, whatever.
We'll see what happens.
But it was like a very, very cool moment. But there were so many events and things happening that it was like, overstimulated is the wrong word, but it was like, I'm back now. I'm like, did that really happen? Or was that like a dream? Yeah. But the coolest thing, a part of it was like the fact that these celebrities I was meeting or all these things, they just treated me like an equal. There's a couple in particular who did that, like Meryl Streep, took a long time to talk to me after I was introduced to her. And she said a music educator changed her life. And it's the reason she is where she is today. And that really impacted me deeply. And Oprah had a long conversation with me when she didn't have to. She kept on asking me questions. I felt like I was like, Oprah's interviewing me. And yeah, of course, the infamous Taylor Swift photo of her wrapping her beautiful arms around me. To have that moment of just, again, connecting. But the craziest part was I was watching Dua Lipa perform, which, wow, I did not know she was that incredible of a performer live. Amazing. And I had this moment where I was watching and I was like, oh, I'm having the same response as if I was to be watching Hilary Hahn performing or watching my husband perform right now. And I was like, oh, you're just a person. Yeah. You're a very talented person, but you're just a person. And it was, again, this cool moment of music connecting, of music being what we all understand.
Yes. Yeah. That's incredible. Viewers of the podcast might have picked up by now on the fact that I am a huge Swiftie. So when I saw the picture of you with Taylor Swift hugging you, I was freaking out for you. What was that moment like? And I mean, just to be there, because that was the night that she won her historic 4th Album of the Year Grammy, which hasn't been done before. She announced a new album. It was a pretty crazy night just for Swifties all over the world, and you got to meet her. So what was that like?
It was fast because they were counting us down back to our seats off of a commercial break. But she was so kind, and she took multiple pictures. Yeah. And I think the reason a lot of us like Taylor Swift so much is she's she's very relatable, right? We were she's kind of like a dork, in the best way. Yeah. And I say this to my kids all the time, they call me unhinged, in a good, cool, Gen Z way, you know? But she even came in, and when I was watching her, and I was I identified a lot with her in the moment of her just walking around the room and being there. She's larger than life, in terms of her presence, but also she just was so human. But it was a really, really incredible moment, especially because her album, 1989 album, is my husband and I, when we were dating, were long distance. That was the album we would drive back and forth to. Oh and so gosh. My husband, sorry, I'm going to put this on the universe, Irving, but he's a closet Swiftie.
I love it.
Yeah, we went to the Reputation tour, and
oh my gosh.
She's just an incredible performer and musician. And so to have that moment, he was shaking so bad, taking our selfie with her.
So cute.
He was like, oh my God, we met her. I was like, I know.
I love that. And that moment you're describing of watching Dua Lipa and feeling just the humanness and the connection of that moment, I feel like I've been thinking about that quite a bit during the Eras tour, and just seeing how Taylor Swift is able to connect with people in such a real, genuine way. And that's why I'm a Swiftie. It's why I love her music so much and have over the years. And I feel like I've just been reflecting a lot on how that can be brought more into classical music. Because I do feel like you were saying before, this regimented idea of success and the pressure that a lot of professional musicians can feel in the industry of having to play things note perfect or having to reach these certain qualifications of what music is. I feel like when you go to concerts like a Taylor Swift concert or like, you know, the Grammy performances, and people are just loving music and enjoying music and connecting over music. Do you have thoughts or ideas on how you see that maybe coming back into the professional field and what your role is as a music educator in educating students who are going out into that world to be music appreciators?
Yeah, so I talk about this some in my TED Talk, which I only got to touch on like really briefly, and I wish I had expanded on more. But again, when we're approaching or like teaching a piece and stuff, like we should be pushing our students for excellence, for feeling what that feels like to perfect something. But we should also teach them the joy in the process of it. And I think there is a shift coming already. Like, look at like two-set violin. Like that wouldn't have existed like when I was going through school. Like, and like that, this is like a newer thing that's like people are latching onto and enjoying and celebrating. And I think when we go into the classroom, there's this balance that we have to make of joy, of feeling like of laughing after messing up a wrong note, but then being like, serious moment here. Okay, let's get it right. And with my kids, I really strive for that. The reason they call me unhinged is like, I'm just very authentically myself on the podium, which is like a huge, massive dork. And like, and just like nerding out about music in front of them. But then I'll have moments where I can be like very serious and like quickly like shift and be like, okay, let's look at this. Let's breathe together. Let's talk through it. And I think that gives them that balance of those things. And that's not my approach. So this, again, Dennis Langevin's approach. So thank you. Like my program is his. I've learned so much from him. But I think that's also what the students kind of latch on to is like just teaching them passion. Like they see me very passionate about music, like very openly passionate about it, just like the way that Taylor Swift is going to be like very, very like passionate about her music. Yeah. Now, please don't say like think that I'm like comparing myself to Taylor Swift because oh my God, like no. Like, but I think like the fact that they see me passionate about something makes them like find that in themselves. And this is something I spoke about earlier with a different organization, and so I'm sorry for repeating myself, but like there's so many kids who have lost the ability to feel passion or the ability to feel that vulnerability to feel passion because then they're afraid they're going to get hurt. And they're not being pushed into those spheres where they can develop passion, develop like loving something, developing process. Are all my kids going to be off to become musicians? No, they're not going to do that in their career. But I guarantee every single one of them is going to associate a good feeling or a hope. I hope all of them can associate at least one good feeling in orchestra with music and bring that into their life. Yeah.
And I appreciate you repeating that because I think that should be the goal of any music education program, of music in general. I think it's so important that that's what you're cultivating in your classroom. And that's, you know, from the things that I was hearing of what your students were saying about you in some of these videos that are online, like they feel that and they feel like orchestra is home and they feel like it's a safe place to connect and have fun and enjoy. And yeah, I think that's really important and just what music is about.
Yeah, and I think but the thing is like so many music educators out there, they're all striving for that balance, but they might feel like confined by the system that they're in. And I recognize that I'm very incredibly lucky to have administration that is supportive of me. I have mentors who have been so kind to me. I have a system where I can kind of do that, a little bit freedom to breathe. But a lot of our own confines are like in our own heads of like what others are doing around us. And I think people think it has to be black and white, one or the other, of like just doing alternative styles or like letting go of pursuing one set assessment or something like that. There is a way to do both. We've lost this nuance in life, I think, of the yes and. Like yes and. So are my kids going to do alternative styles and do improvisation or work with a hip hop artist? Yes. Are they also going to play like the Corelli Christmas Concerto for assessment and play it beautifully? Yes. You can do both. You can push them for excellence. You can push them for like note refinement, but you can also meet them where they're at in their process and in their journey of it.
Yeah. Hearing the way you talk about your students and just having heard some of your students talking about you, you pour so much of yourself, your time, your energy, your effort into your work. And I can tell that you get a lot from it.
Yes.
But I also just know from having done a lot of education projects myself, like it can be pretty draining, taxing work at times. How do you still bring that same energy and enthusiasm to the classroom, even when, you know, when you're stressed and when life is hard and when you're balancing a family with 2 kids at home? How do you pull all those pieces together?
Yeah, so I actually stopped posting on social media for a long time because of that. Because another mother who's a music educator said to me at a gig, and she's someone I like greatly admire. She said to me, "I don't understand how you're doing it all." And I had this moment where I was like, "Whoa, I'm doing a lot of things, but it's not easy. Like it's not. It's really hard. And some days it is very hard. But I come in, I am just exhausted and beat down. And in front of the kids, I will say to them, I'm like, I'm not having a good day today. And I think to have an adult say that to them is like a teaching moment for them too, where I'm very honest, where I have that culture of them being like, I'm not having a good day today, but they're learning from that, like, even though I'm not having a good day, I'm still showing up for you. Yeah. Like I will always show up for you. And they learn that too, of like, when things are hard, like it's okay for things to be hard, as long as we keep showing up, as long as we keep doing our best. And oftentimes as soon as I get going, that feedback loop starts of like, I said like a goofy joke. Brian in the back laughed. I'm like, yeah, one down. And then it starts going again and like growing more. And then like suddenly I'm like, okay, let's try to phrase something. And it happens. I'm like, oh, yes. And then it's like all this energy like starts coming and growing with them. And moving. And I tell them at the end of the class, I'm like, wow, thank you for that. Like, thank you. You made me feel so much better today. Like, thank you. And they're learning from that, like how they approach something impacts others too. So I'm just very open with them now with that. With having 2 littles, like it is hard. There's a lot of times like it is really hard where I feel like I've just given everything on the podium all day and I come home and I am just like absolutely drained. And that's okay too. That's okay for my kids to see me tired. That's okay for them to see me working and seeing a mom do that. But then I just give a little bit more. Like I just put the phone away for like 15 minutes, like and very intensely focused and, you know, play dress up. And 15 minutes isn't a long time, but it fills that cup. And then obviously like I'm still with them the rest of the night. Like I'm making dinner, I'm doing all of these different things, but it's like 15 minutes of like turning away the phone, turning everything off and just like being there. So I think like chunking things up into those very manageable moments and just being human makes all the difference in the world. We don't have to be perfect. Yeah. We gotta like just get rid of that idea. Just be, you know. And I have to say thank you like to my husband. Like he's a huge reason that I'm able to do that I am. He's my biggest supporter, my number 1 cheerleader. And with his work, he is able to be a very present father. He's a fantastic father, like way more cool than I will ever be. Like with the kids, he's the fun one. You both sound pretty cool to me. But it takes a team too. And then I'm not going to give away too much because I'm hoping there's this project that I'm working on that's going to take off soon of helping with resources with this sort of thing. And so like, it seems so goofy, but my husband and I will have like, okay, the girls have gone to bed, we're playing cards together. We're not going to watch a show. We're going to play cards and we're going to talk. Or we have once a month on a Saturday, we have FAD Day, which is Family Adventure Day. And we all go out and like, we have to go do something we've never done before. And as a family, no one's allowed to schedule anything on the day. And it's just us.
I love that so much.
And like having those like really goofy, like scheduled and regimented things actually like creates opportunity to connect. So it's the same thing with our kids, right? We always say more structure gives kids the freedom to create. It's the same for our lives. Us having structure gives us the freedom to live, to breathe.
That's so cool. I love the idea. FAD.
Yeah,
F-A-D. Okay, I think everyone should do that.
FAD Day. Family Adventure Day.
What's a particularly memorable FAD day?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. We'll like just like drive and like we went to like a Scottish festival. Like my,
oh wow.
I'm very lucky that like after my body is like, I can jump back into like being a mom. Like I had my second and my body, I was like, just like ready to go. And so like at the time, Millie, she was like 2 weeks old and we're like off running her like through a Scottish festival in the field as my like 2.5-year-old is like running towards the bagpipes being like, Mommy. And like just enjoying those things. Like that was really cool. And like we recently like went to an indoor water park. Like it's just like find the things out there, go explore your communities and just go.
I love it. Very cool. The majority of musicians will most likely teach in their careers, whether it's privately or in the classroom, or if they're in an orchestra or a band doing education projects in their communities. Do you have a piece of advice in approaching teaching? What has been something that has really helped you in music education?
So this is for my people who have not even gone on to student teach yet. Reach out to your middle schools and high schools and elementary schools all around you, like whoever you're wanting to teach it with, whatever demographic, and ask them to come and teach. Ask them if you can come and be on the podium one day. Ask them if that you can come and observe them. I guarantee every one of them is going to say yes. Just go watch. It's so easy to just go into your little university bubble of I did String Project, which is a phenomenal program. Cannot speak highly enough of it. But there's nothing else like just going and practicum in a classroom that you're going to be exactly modeling and doing that. Like, just do. Education is not something you can learn from a book. Education is something you learn from doing, from observing, from watching, from mirroring, and being in the back. And thank you to every educator who's ever opened their doors to allow me to do that, because I have learned so much from you. And that's why I keep on saying, with this word, I'm like, there's so many educators who deserve this, and shouting for it's just a matter of circumstance that I ended up here. But just go learn and just go do and sit and be a part of it. Because you can't get everything you need from a book, and you can't get everything you need from university, but also give yourself grace of time. Give yourself grace of time of failing. And the best way to do that and to still maintain control of your classroom is go up to the classroom and literally say in front of the kids, I do this all the time, I'm trying something new today. We're going to see if it works. And the kids are like, okay. And then I'll be in the middle of it. I'm like, this isn't working. None of this is working, but you know what? We're here. So just, again, being authentically human, the kids latch on to that.
Incredible. I like to end my podcast episodes with a quick rapid fire question section.
Yeah, hit me. I'll be fast.
Okay. Who's your favorite composer?
Right now, of school composing?
It can be of anything, and it could change tomorrow, but just right now.
Right now, working with Katie O'Hara-Labrie, which she's commissioning a piece for us. She writes excellent educational repertoire where every instrument gets a very good part, and her range is super diverse. And I love that she's an incredible female composer.
Amazing. Favorite piece of classical music?
It's going to be Mahler. The Resurrection Symphony.
2. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And favorite movie soundtrack?
How to Train Your Dragon.
That one is
it's so good.
Crazy epic.
Yes, it is so amazing.
Very nice. What would you say is your go-to resource for music educators?
My other educators.
I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. A book that you keep coming back to, either you keep reading it or you keep thinking about it, reflecting on it.
Just because the season of life I'm in, it's this book that's How to Keep House When You're Drowning. It's not actually about how to keep house. There are tidbits in there of who knew a sock drawer didn't have to be organized, just throw it in a bin. It's those things, but it's also about just accepting yourself. I'm a major perfectionist, very, very much. I'm very hard on myself. And so it's something I'm learning how to be kind with my own self.
How about a musician you really admire and why?
Besides my husband, is that a cheesy answer?
No, not at all.
Oh my God, he's an incredible musician. So, but I said this in my CBS interview, a more well-known is Jacob Collier. The way his brain works, Mozart of our generation, unbelievable.
And he's the one who he made a video, and then you got to meet him at the Grammys.
Unbelievable,
which is so cool.
I always show my students, I send them, I found this new YouTube video, watch it, and nerd out with me. The way he breaks down a piece. And the reason I like him so much is not just because of this crazy repertoire he puts out, it's how open he is about talking about it and breaking it down and making it identifiable for any music range and ability can appreciate his music.
That's so cool. I love the idea of breaking it down and just making it a little more accessible, understandable. That's really cool.
Yeah.
What is the most useful app on your phone?
Besides my metronome, my Google Calendar.
Yes, necessary.
My Google Calendar.
Especially for someone as busy as you.
Yes, my Google Calendar.
And finally, if there was one resource, so a book, movie, podcast, anything that you could recommend that you feel like someone really ought to check out, what would it be?
Another book. It's this was given to me by Julie Duty of United Sound. It's called Demystifying Disability, and it's a really quick read, and it's really accessible, and it gives you just kind of the tools to understand and demystify things, because it shouldn't be mystified. It should be just a normal thing, a part of our life.
Incredible. I so appreciate your time and for coming on and just being so open and honest about your journey and all the pieces of what you're doing right now. I know we didn't even get to everything that you're doing, because I don't know if that's even possible. But if there is just a final piece of advice that you could leave with listeners, and also if you could just let us know where people can connect with you, the work that you're doing here at Annandale High School, or we didn't even really get to it, but, harp stuff that you're doing, anything, just how can people connect with you?
I'm going to say another quote, which, again, comes from Dr. Brian Bowman, my husband's euphonium professor. And my favorite phrase from him is, comparison is the thief of joy. So don't allow comparison to steal that joy of you. Like, it's very easy for me, and there's a lot of struggle, like, behind the scenes. There's a lot of things that I am very much working through. There's a lot of things that are very, very hard, but the universe only shows you on social media, like, the positive, so comparison is the thief of joy. But people, speaking of social media, can just friend me on Facebook. Just friend me on Facebook and be a part of it. I'm not very active on social media. Like, there's my Instagram, which is just blonde, like the color of my hair, and then Harpy, blonde Harpy. You can find me there. I don't post a ton, just for privacy reasons with my own family. But so the best way to connect with me is send me a Facebook message. Like, send me a Facebook message, an Instagram DM, email me. Like, I just like connecting with people. So.
Well, it's been incredible to connect with you, and I so appreciate everything you've had to share. I know that it'll be really valuable for other people too. Just your honesty and just how open you are with your students and here in this interview. I think it's really important to share all of those little pieces of what life is and what life as a musician is. So really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Orchestrating Your Career podcast, and a big thank you to Annie for sharing her story, her passion, and her advice. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and it would be a huge help if you could give the podcast a review on Spotify or wherever you're listening to it. And leave a comment below about what stuck with you the most from Annie's story and the work that she's doing at Annandale High School. The resources mentioned in this episode and where you can connect with Annie and the work that she's doing are all linked below. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms, as well as get more frequent updates on Instagram. To watch videos of all the episodes and get extra behind-the-scenes content, check out the YouTube channel Orchestrating Your Career. Subscribe so you don't miss anything. Share this episode with a musician or anyone else you think might be interested, and look out for new episodes on the 1st and 15th of every month. Next episode's conversation will be with Jamal Moore, a singer, arranger, and vocal contractor who, in his career so far, has worked with artists like Beyoncé, sung on movie soundtracks like The Lion King and The Color Purple, soloed with the LA Philharmonic, and puts out his own music as a singer-songwriter. He is such a cool guy with an amazing journey to share, so make sure you stay tuned for his episode. Until next time, here's the harp and euphonium performance you've all been waiting for. Annie and Irving, take it away.